Alright, in this video I want to get into some of the things going on as we approach the end. According to the book of Daniel, according to Revelation. And I want to actually get into what the word says. And that's that. I've been listening to a lot of people talk about prophecy over the years. And lately I've gone back and started to listen to some people. And it's basically, they all say the same thing. And they don't really get into the Bible. If they do, they bring up a verse here and there, and they don't really get into it, and they make this whole story up. And the story seems to be the same thing, that there's going to be a peace treaty by this Antichrist that shows up with Israel. So you're going to notice them very easily. The peace treaty with Israel, the nation of Israel, for 7 years. But Israel's going to have a temple built by then. They're going to be offering up sacrifices again. And that during this peace treaty, the Antichrist is going to stop the sacrifices halfway through, about 3.5 years in, and then I guess wreak havoc. And that's basically what you're told. And there's really no scriptural evidence for that. There's one verse that they'll take, and it doesn't even really mean what they think it means. And that's why you need to look to God. You need to get into the Bible yourself and pray, because trusting in a church, trusting in a man, it's not going to get you anywhere. You know what Jesus says at the end times. What's the first thing he says? Let no man deceive you. That should let you know that you should be going to God, prayerfully going to God. He cares about you the same way he cares about any one of us. So he'll show you all things if you come to him and you ask. You just got to have faith. You need to stop thinking that any other man's above you and closer to God than you are. And you need to stop thinking that somehow man's organized churches are somehow blessed and you can't go against them. Look at the life of Jesus. He went against Israel, his established church. So, anyway, let's get into this. This is in Daniel chapter 9. And in verse 24, we're told about 70 weeks. Right? And this is one of the examples of where you can get a day for a year in prophecy, where it leads all the way up from when the decree went out to rebuild Jerusalem after it was destroyed, and to the point where Jesus returns. Right? For some reason, they put something that is said here at the end of time, and I'm gonna get into this here. It says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So this is the key point of what is being talked about here. The prophecy is about what's going to happen with the holy city, Jerusalem, and it's to do this. This is what the context of this whole paragraph is about, is to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, a reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So this is about Jesus and what he's going to do. So that's what you got to think about when you're reading this paragraph. This is the context. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, And the people of the prince shall come, destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So we're going to stop right there for a second. We're going to point out that it's going to be 69 weeks, 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. Add that together, that's 69 weeks until the Messiah shows up. So there's 1 week, so 7 years that seems to be missing here. But you've got to think about this. This shows when the Messiah is to show up, right? And when he's 30, that's when he establishes his ministry. That is when this missing 7th week comes into play. And we're going to see that as we go on here, because this is what this whole paragraph is about Jesus. But all of a sudden people turn this into the Antichrist for some reason. But this is about Jesus and what he's going to do, right? And it tells you, after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, right? So it's like after that time, he's cut off. And it's another interesting thing because it says after 62 weeks. So it's this 7 weeks can be some other period. I know some people say that this 7-week period was after the decree went out, and after the 7 weeks, there was silence from God. He didn't send any more prophets or anything, and it was a period of silence. And then after this period, there was a period of silence. And this period here, the 62 weeks, is when God didn't speak until he came himself. Right? And it says, after he is cut off, the prince shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. Right? So this is not some period way off in the distance after Jesus is cut off that this happens. It continues on and says, and he shall confirm the covenant for many with 1 week. So here is that 1 week. The 70 weeks, we're told about 69 of them, right? And for 1 week, he confirms the covenant. This is the week that is being talked about at the end here, that a lot of people twist into being the Antichrist. Because it says, in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. How did he do that? Well, 3.5 years into his ministry, he was crucified, which was the fulfillment of all the sacrifices. So he put an end to all of it right then and there. The medium, the veil in the temple was ripped in half. It was all done. This is not the Antichrist coming into the actual temple, third temple. This is talking about the second temple. Read this. This is talking to Daniel about when the decree is put out to rebuild the temple. So this is talking about the second temple. Then Jesus returns. It tells you after 60, because these 70 weeks are determined, right? 69 of them are applied here, and 1 week that is not mentioned is this one here. He's going to confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Like I said, the context of this whole paragraph is about the Messiah. Let's finish this up. It says, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. And this is what people are like, Jesus is going to destroy it? This is the Antichrist. Jesus came, and the fig tree represents Israel. He cursed the fig tree to produce no more fruit, and it withered away. He told the Pharisees and the Sadducees, I'm taking the kingdom away from you, and giving it to another people who are going to actually produce the fruit. He's giving it to the Gentiles. And then he warned everybody, Matthew 24, Luke 21, I think it is. I think I have it placeholder in there. Yes, Luke 21 talks about the temple being destroyed. And when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel, to flee out of Judea. And that's exactly what has already happened. Jesus confirmed the covenant, the Messiah. This is what is being talked about, Messiah the Prince. There's no mention of the Antichrist. You got the Prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. This is Rome when they came after Jesus ascended, besieged Jerusalem, and it got so bad with the lack of food and everything that was going on that people started to turn on each other and eat their own children. It was horrible. Then Rome came in, killed off a bunch of the Israelites, and destroyed the temple. That's what it says, and the end shall be of a flood, and the end of war of desolations are determined. So at the time, at the end of this prophecy, this happened. For some reason, you have all these churches, all these pastors telling you that this week is all of a sudden cut off and thrown to the end of time somewhere where you don't know when it's going to start. It's going to start when the Antichrist confirms a covenant with many for a week. That could be something that Satan wants to do to copy Jesus, but that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about what Jesus is doing. And this covenant, forgot to get into, he shall confirm the covenant. This is the new covenant. You know, the first covenant was sealed with blood of the Lamb. It was a foreshadowing of Jesus confirming the covenant with his own blood. It's a new covenant with the laws written on our hearts. So all of this has already happened. Not on Daniel's point of view, but from our point of view. Jerusalem, the holy city. "70 weeks are determined upon thy people in the holy city." So it's upon the Jewish people in the holy city. That's when it's going to end. And that's where the kingdom of God is passed from Israel to the Gentiles, to the nations, to all the non-Jews, the non-Israelites. And it has to do with the Messiah. The Messiah does all this, and then the prince shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, and that's exactly what Rome did. That's why I'm always pointing out to people how in Daniel chapter 2 we know who Babylon is, because Babylon was the golden head, and they were conquered by Medo-Persia, the silver arms and chest in that statue. They become Babylon. Then Greece, the belly and thighs of brass, conquers Medo-Persia. They become Babylon. Then Rome, the iron legs, conquers Greece, becomes a new power. They become Babylon. They're the ones that destroy the city and the sanctuary, just as Babylon did. And they scatter the Israelites, take them as slaves and all that. Then we have the feet of iron and clay. That's when Rome mixes with God's people and becomes papal Rome. That's why I'm always bringing that up, because it's right there in front of your face, and for some reason people don't see it. And even if they do see it, they just throw it away because, oh, their church says something different. Their favorite pastor says something different. You can't go to God yourself? You can't read for yourself? Why are you just going with somebody else's interpretation when it plainly tells you? I was listening to somebody talking about uh, the two-horned goat versus the one-horned goat, or I think it's a two-horned ram versus one-horned goat in Daniel chapter 8, or I think it's a chapter right before this. And they're talking about how this represents this and that and the other thing, when it tells you right in the chapter that that's Medo-Persia versus Greece. It doesn't bullshit you on this and make you have to think about what does this represent. It tells you. The Bible actually tells you what everything in prophecy means. If you pay attention, you're actually reading it. But that's why we get Jesus coming and giving out parables, so that those who are the tares, those are the goats, they're not going to know what's going on. It's only those that are his that are going to see and know what the hell's going on. But anyway, I just wanted to clear that up because I keep hearing about, oh, the tribulation is going to start, tribulation is going to start. What the hell are you talking about? This doesn't talk about any tribulation. That's why some people are talking about a 3.5 year tribulation, which is what you get out of Revelation when you see like the 40 and 2 months, right? And it talks about this beast reigning for 1,260 days, or a time, times, and dividing of times. A time is 1 year, times is 2 years, and dividing of time is half a year, so 3.5 years. But they forget that in Daniel, through this prophecy, it's not literal 70 weeks. Each day represents a year. That's the same thing I bring up, is like Ezekiel. I think it was Ezekiel, who was made to lay on his side for 40 days, each day representing a year. And just as Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness, each day representing a year that Israel was wandering in the wilderness. So this is actually 1,260 years, which I've shown in other videos about how this power reigns from 538 AD to 1798 AD. That's when it receives its deadly wound. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out my other videos that have to do with the prophecies in Daniel and Revelation. I don't want to go over it so many times where that's basically all I talk about. I want to get into some of these other things here. I wanted to go step by step to actually get into Revelation chapter 17, and these other chapters are going to give a bit of a context of what's going on. So we got this beast that had received its deadly wound. It was healed. So this is after or around the time of 1798. This other beast rises up and ends up making an image to the beast and becoming just like the beast, combining church and state. This is the United States of America, and they're the ones that are going to be putting out this mark of the beast. And that's when we could jump to the next chapter, because I've already gone over that in other videos in more detail. Is afterwards we get the 144,000, 12,000 from every tribe of Israel. And so we get an image of after the mark of the beast. That's when Jesus comes. That's when people are raptured. There's a lot of people thinking, oh, pre-trib rapture, mid-trib rapture, post-trib rapture. Well, or the tribulation has already happened. That period of 3.5 years, that's really actually 1,260 years, has already happened. That 7-year period of time on Daniel's 70 weeks has already happened. So after The rapture, that's when the plagues are poured out. So there's 7 plagues, and that could be over 7 years. It doesn't say really the time frame, other than Babylon's judgment is in an hour. So that's if we're going by prophetic time, that's 15 days. Because if a day is a year, every 2 hours is a month. So an hour is a half a month. And the months are 30 days. I'll help you figure that out there. Anyway, so after we get the Mark of the Beast thing, then we got these people sealed. We got the fall of Babylon, right? And then there's a harvest. So I kind of skipped a step there. We got people, these aren't people that are necessarily raptured. It talks about people being sealed. They are sealed. And then Babylon falls. And we're going to get into that understanding of what's going on in the time frame in this series of events so that it makes sense. Then we have a harvest. All right? So people are sealed. They're going to go through and see the fall of Babylon. And then there's a harvest. And Jesus talks about the harvest. He says the angels are the reapers. And they're going to separate the wheat from the tares. The tares are going to be gathered up to be burned, and the wheat's going to be gathered up in the barn. So you can see this right here where the angels come and they take the wheat, and then here they are stomping on the grapes, and this is the tares. So let's jump over, get a time frame again. So then it makes it seem as though this might get into detail of what's going on during the fall of Babylon. But it made it seem as though you see Babylon fall, then there's a rapture. So we might be here just as Israel was in Egypt when the plagues fell. They weren't taken out during the plagues. They were protected. And like Jesus says, you see the storm around you and all this stuff, you're not to be fearful at all. Don't worry about it. 10,000 might fall at one side, 15,000 on the other side, but nothing's going to even harm a hair on your head. And you need to have that faith and trust in God. So you need to get close to God, because that's the only way you're going to have that peace. Because a church ain't going to give it to you, and no pastor's going to give it to you. No pope's going to give it to you. It's God alone. But anyway, here we see the start of the angels getting ready to drop the 7 last plagues. And that's where we jump into Revelation 16. And we see, the people who receive the mark of the beast get this painful sore and all this stuff going on. And like I said, these people are going to think they're doing God's will. That's why they're not repenting. They're talking about all these plagues being poured out on them, but they're so blind that they think, why is God doing this to us? They don't get it. They don't see it. They don't get how they're not following God at all. God's going to tell them, I never knew you. Because these people, they're like hardcore capitalists that combined the Christian church with the United States government, and they create an image to the beast, and they start imposing their religious views on other people and pushing their mark, and they actually think they're doing God's will, and they start taking out those who dissent, And the reason they get this going, or the excuse, is because the left is becoming more and more crazy and godless, and that is just setting the stage for a leap to the right to create this beast that ends up doing this. And they think they're on God's side and they're doing God's will, even though they're not living the way Jesus lived and taught. He gave up everything. He gave up heaven to give it all to us. And he taught the people, like the rich, who he said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than the rich to go to heaven. He was telling them to sell all they have and give to everybody else, so that they can have treasure in heaven. Build up your kingdom in heaven. Build up your treasures in heaven. But these people who are calling themselves Christians want to build up a kingdom here on earth when this is Satan's kingdom. Why do you want to build up a home here? Yeah, these people may talk about not building up your home here, but they say and they do not. They do the opposite. And it's not how Christians originally lived. When Jesus left, they all sold all what they had and they helped each other out. And the tithes went to the whole church, not a separation of clergy and laymen. It was for everybody. Not like today where the church money, that's just for the clergy, the pastors and the deacons and the priests and the cardinals and what have you. It's for them, not for you. So you're giving that money to support them. You are just there to get the money to support them. You're their little cash cows that they milk. So if you need something, well, hey, they might do a bake sale, a raffle, food drive. They'll do something like, just go pray. But they're not going to give you their money. No, they're not going to do that. That's for them. So you can see why they think they're on God's side, and they're so deluded that even when these plagues are poured out on them, they don't repent because they never actually receive the love of the truth. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, and a lot of them don't even realize that they are because they're self-deluded. So anyway, I think it comes to when the last plague, Babylon, which is Papal Rome, the Vatican, that's when they get theirs. That's when we come over to here, where it describes who Babylon is. And I wanted to get into this because it says something interesting. That is why I named the video what I named it. You might think it's a little odd, but you'll get it when I get into this here. So I'm going to read this, and this is going to be the end of the video, is this chapter right here. It says here, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of the abominations of filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration." Some people, they take this and they make stuff up, but some of the stuff right here is actually explained. "And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall descend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose name were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So here is where I thought things were interesting. The Vatican is the city of the 7 hills, and a woman represents a church. She's fornicated and committed adultery because she's married to the state. And in I think it's 1929 was officially where the Vatican was recognized as a kingdom. So the Pope is not only supposedly the head of the church, but he's also the head of a state, a government. So it's a combined church and state. And where we are right now is that we're on the 8th. We're on the 8th king, because since 1929 there's been 7 kings. The last one, he continued a short space because he just resigned. So this 8th one that's in, he's basically continuing the reign of the 7th. So he's of the 7. And he goes in the perdition. He's the last pope. And even the Catholic Church has a prophet, I think his name is Malachi Martin, who talked about all of the popes that were ever going to exist. And even to the point we are today, where he named every one of them and what they would pick their name to be, and he was correct on all of them. It's been like over 100 or so, I guess. And this was the last one. So that fits with what the Bible's saying. And that's why I also listen to every denomination, because God reaches out to everybody. He loves everybody, and he even reaches out to pagans and Babylon itself, and sends his people to shine light, to help them out, to call them out. And this interesting thing here is that these 10 kings don't have a kingdom yet, but they have one mind and shall give their power unto the beast. They give their power unto the beast. Why? These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. So they give the power so that they can wage war against the Lamb, which is weird, right? Why would they do that? Well, if you haven't been paying attention lately, they've been talking about all kinds of UFO disclosures. And aliens, right? Aliens are coming. And the Vatican has set up a bunch of telescopes. They even have one called Lucifer, where they're watching for something. They're looking for something. And it was Jesuit priests who actually formed the idea and pushed out the Big Bang Theory and the globe Earth, and doing all these things that are actually the precursors to accepting aliens instead of what they are, fallen angels, demons. And it's like the movie Transformers, where you get the Autobots to come down, right? They come down and they're the good guys trying to get away from the bad guys, right? No, they're the ones that are actually the Decepticons, and they're calling the good guys who are coming, whose story you haven't heard yet, they're calling them the Decepticons. And it's a big trick, because these fallen angels are coming pretending to be aliens, and they're going to be telling you of something else coming, because they're trying to unite us together to actually fight against the Lamb, because he's soon to show up. So when the aliens come, they all give their power to one, and they want to go to war against the Lamb. We're going to get into that a little bit more in a second here, but let's just finish this up. It says, He saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, for God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is the great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth, which is the Vatican, where all the kings come to kiss the Pope's ring. All the presidents and chancellors, everybody. But eventually, these people wake up to their deception, and they kill the whore. So they knock the whore off from riding the beast. And this is where we get into Revelation 18, where Babylon is falling, it's destroyed. I've gotten into this before. But what I want to get into is this guy right here, the rider on the white horse. Revelation 19, verse 11, it says, And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but himself. And he was clothed with vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, and white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness of the wrath of Almighty God. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So we already read about after the plagues are poured out, Babylon falls, that there's the harvest, where that's when the wheat is gathered up and the tares are burned. And in Revelation, it refers to them as the grapes that are going to be tread under the winepress, which is what Jesus comes. He returns. The angels gather up his elect, and he just stomples all of this. Just crushes them. Lays waste. Yet he's made to look like the bad guy, because there's going to be those fallen angels that come saying, oh, the ones that are coming after, they're the ones that are the evil ones. But they're trying to get us to help them fight against God. And they deceive the whole world. And ultimately, yeah, they're defeated. No doubt about that. And as you can see here, I guess I'll read this, and hopefully this is the end, unless other things inspire me here. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of men, of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and the armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, and against his army. And the beast, as you can see here, they gathered the kings and their armies to make war against Jesus. Isn't that crazy? And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceedeth out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So don't worry, there's ultimately justice given out, and there'll be an end to this. And it looks pretty soon. Granted, this could happen within the year, but it's hard to tell. Things can be delayed, and it could be another 5, 10, 20 years for all I know. But you can see how all these pieces are coming together, and it seems like it's getting faster. So even though it looks like it could take a little while, boom, it could just happen. So just got to keep your eyes out. You got to keep watching. But anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Take care.